having me here. Little ode to California. This philosophy, so-called society.
Robert Scott Weinrich, better known by his nickname Wino, is one of the leading figures in the America's underground heavy metal movement. Even though none of the influential bands Wino has fronted, The Obsessed, St. Vitus, Spirit Caravan, etc., ever achieved mainstream success, they are collectively seen as essential building blocks in the history of heavy metal, particularly in the doom field. As a result, Wino's legend has steadily spread over a 3.5-decade career marked by more challenges than triumphs, making him one of the most referenced and respected icons in the global heavy metal community. Wino was born on September 28, 1961, and picked up his first guitar at the ripe old age of 8, and by age 15 had already started his first serious band, Warhorse, while attending T.S. Wooten High School in Rockville, Maryland. By his own admission, the guitarist had a difficult time choosing a favorite style amid his multiple influences ranged from the Beatles to Frank Zappa to Black Sabbath to proto-punk energy bands, as they were called then, like the Dictators, at least until he witnessed a Judas Priest concert in '78 and was transfixed by the opening act, Pentagram. An unsigned band from the neighboring state of Virginia, Pentagram and its magnetic frontman, Bobby Liebling, had been following in the footsteps of Black Sabbath and Blue Cheer since the early 70s, and their act convinced Wino to step into the line with his own recently renamed fledgling outfit, The Obsessed. But, much like Wino's new heroes, The Obsessed were a band out of time, completely unfashionable and pretty much untouchable in the eyes of bottom-line wary record companies of the era. So after making no headway for several years, on stage or in demo form, the only resort left for the vocalist, guitarist, and his cohorts, Mark Lau, bass, and Dave the Slave, drums, to pursue was to finance their own recordings, which they did, with 1983's Sodden Jackal EP to be sold at gigs. 2 years later, The Obsessed also managed to land a song named Concrete Cancer, a Metal Blades Metal Massacre Volume No. 6 compilation, but they were obviously going nowhere fast. So when Wino's connections in the DC hardcore scene, Ian MacKaye and Henry Rollins, recommended he look into vacant lead vocalist position with the LA-based doom outfit St. Vitus, Wino jumped at the chance, and 1986 found him living in Tinseltown, rehearsing 6 days a week with Vitus. However, as the only bona fide heavy metal band signed to seminal independent hardcore label SST, St. Vitus were hardly living the rock star life. In fact, guitarist Dave Chandler, bassist Mark Adams, and drummer Armando Acosta had recently departed. Lead singer Scott Regers had little to show for their half-decade existence, save for a record deal, a few albums, and name recognition on the fringes of metal and hardcore. Although Wino's contributions were immediately felt on St. Vitus' next and generally acknowledged best album, Born Too Late, America's growing fascination with heavy metal had yet to expand enough beyond glam and thrash to appreciate Vitus' revival of Black Sabbath's doom-laden approach. That said, the tide would steadily turn in that direction throughout the late 80s, opening the door for their band to tour Europe. Yet St. Vitus enjoyed very meager rewards from their next two albums, Mournful Cries, '88, and 5, 1990. Around this time, Wino also covertly contributed vocals to the demos of an obscure LA doom band named Lost Breed, and guitar and bass parts for the Mentors. All of these factors, as well as escalating substance abuse and deteriorating relationships with the members of St. Vitus, combined to drive Wino out of the band. Around the same time, an eponymous release of ancient demos of The Obsessed also motivated him to resurrect his old group with the help of bassist Scott Reeder and drummer Greg Rogers. 2 new studio albums by The Obsessed followed on Hellhound Records, with 1992's Lunar Womb solidifying Wino's standing as a doom force to be reckoned with. The Church Within, featuring bassist Guy Penas, issued in 1994, was picked up by Columbia Records, but the record did not meet the major label's unrealistic sales expectations, and The Obsessed's latest incarnation soon crumbled. Wino now had something bigger to worry about anyway: a life-threatening drug habit. After surviving nearly 2 decades worth of heavy boozing and drug abuse, Wino suddenly found himself alone and adrift in Los Angeles as the 90s neared their halfway mark. With no band to focus his energies on, he was despondent, destitute, and eventually became homeless. He finally hit rock bottom when an injured foot became so infected it nearly required amputation. But Weinrich proved resilient. He made his way back east, where he proceeded to clean up his act and inevitably started playing music again. He hooked up with former Wretched bassist vocalist Dave Sherman and ex-Unorthodox drummer Gary Ism to launch a new band, Shine, which was shortly thereafter renamed Spirit Caravan. Over the course of 2 inspired albums, 99's Jug Full of Sun and 2001's Elusive Truth, and 1 EP, 99's Dream Wheel, Spirit Caravan developed a leaner, more psychedelic, and even more spiritual doom metal template. It was responsible for some of the strongest material of Wino's career, even though old, Obsessed material continued to be reutilized on these releases. Warmly embraced by the bustling stoner rock scene period, Spirit Caravan properly exposed Wino's talents to a larger, younger, and more accepting audience than ever before. Not to be outdone, many longtime Wino loyalists also considered Spirit Caravan his crowning achievement, making it all the sadder when the trio decided to go their separate ways in May of 2002, leaving behind 2003's The Last Embrace anthology as a final keepsake. However, Spirit Caravan's downfall hardly spelled the end of the road for Wino, who, if anything, appeared to be busier than ever as he briefly joined Place of Skulls, the band that led former Pentagram guitarist Victor Griffin for 2003's With Vision LP, performed on Dave Grohl's Probot project amid countless guest solos played on many other stoner rock band albums, then founded yet another original power trio named The Hidden Hand. For this endeavor, Wino partnered with bassist vocalist Bruce Falkenberg and drummer Dave Hennessy in what amounted to a conspiracy theory-laced psychedelic doom group, tweaked by sporadic hardcore speed bursts, as had been Wino's custom going back to his Obsessed days, whose political concerns were obviously totally at odds with Spirit Caravan's more ethereal subject matter. The Hidden Hand would go on to release 3 studio albums in 2003's Divine Propaganda, 2004's Mother Teacher Destroyer, and 2007 The Resurrection of Whiskey Foot, featuring a new drummer, Evan Tanner, amid a smattering of EPs and splits. The band duly ran its course as Wino, by then increasingly stable in his personal life, started feeling creatively restless. Never one to say no to a guest appearance or a new collaboration, Wino joined forces with Neurosis vocalist guitarist Scott Kelly on bassist Al Cisneros and Melvin's drummer Dale Crover in a supergroup called Shrine Builder. The Erebus LP emerged the following year, and then he surprised fans everywhere by releasing his first album under the Wino name with 2009's Punctuated Equilibrium. The biggest surprise came a year later, however, with the release of his debut solely, largely acoustic effort, Adrift on Germany's Exile on mainstream label. Despite its instrumentation, his acoustic guitar, with some electric highlights, the album was indeed heavy. In 2011, while touring in support of Adrift, Wino met German singer-songwriter Connie Ox on a label tour. Ox was supported his aptly tilted raw love songs effort. The pair hit it off immediately, shared some stage time during the tour, and wrote and recorded together afterwards. The end result was the collaborative album Heavy Kingdom, and it appeared in Europe in January of 2012 and in North America in that early spring. In a Guitar World interview, he stated that his signature sound comes from a Gibson Les Paul guitar with DiMarzio Super Distortion pickups plugged into a Sun Model T amp. He also changes the pre- and power tubes of his amps with EH and JJ ones because it's like a fuzz box built into the amp.